Hi everyone, we're doing something a bit different today. I've actually got a group here that I'm talking to. Hopefully you can hear me. So if you have any questions, ask them, but I can't answer them until after. But you're welcome to ask questions. So I hope you can hear me, and we'll see how we go with this Thursday Thoughts today. My Thursday Thoughts today is about emotional eating, and I'm doing a presentation about emotional eating. So I'll talk to you guys later on, but I've got a group of real people here today in front of me, which is different to looking at I usually look at my screen. So it's quite different. So I've already told you a little bit about me. So emotional eating. So first of all, it's not necessarily a problem. It's okay that we do it sometimes. So whether emotional eating is a problem is whether or not it's something that affects your health, affects your physical health, your mental health, your life in a negative way. Because if, every so often you have a bit of chocolate and it makes you feel happy and it's emotional eating and it's kind of helping you deal with some stress, that's not necessarily an issue. But if that's all of the time, and if that's the only way you know how to manage stress, and if it's causing you problems with your health or those kinds of things, then obviously it is. So emotional eating on its own isn't necessarily a problem. We're human beings and we're kind of prone to that, and if it's just something that a little bit here and there, it's not always an issue. It's not an issue until it becomes an issue, and so it's a bit like drinking. Drinking alcohol isn't an issue, but it's an issue if it is for you. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. It's not necessarily a bad thing in of itself. But it can be if it becomes an issue for you, which it very much has been an issue for me on and off over my life. So, and it's the emotional eating roundabout, right? Because generally speaking, the reason that people emotionally eat usually has something to do with changing a state. So whether it's numbing, making yourself feel better, rewarding yourself, some change of feeling, right? We're trying to stop a feeling or create a good feeling or numb something, or it's usually about those kinds of things. Is that fair to say for most of us? Yeah. And so because that's what it's about, the unfortunate thing is that if we add shame to it, as in you shouldn't do that, you should have more self-control, what's wrong with you, all of those kinds of things. And our way of dealing with emotions is with food. Well, there's quite a challenge there, isn't it? Because if you have the food and then you need to feel ashamed because you had the food, and your way of dealing with the shame and those emotions is by having the food, it's a never-ending cycle, as it just go round and round in circles. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that happens with emotional eating, is not just the fact that you do it, but then for whatever reason, and we'll discuss some of those reasons, but society, this way we talk to ourselves, we feel ashamed or bad or wrong about it, and then the cycle continues. Because if your go-to mechanism, if your go-to of how to deal with stress is food, and you're feeling stressed and you're feeling bad about yourself, well, where do you think you're going to go? You're going to automatically go to the thing you know. And for many of us, that's food. And in this modern world, it very much is. But in saying that, though, it is important to mention that many of us, probably most of us, do this behaviour, but we do it with different things. So we might do it with gambling. We might do it with being online all the time. We might do it with addicted to games. We might do it, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, whatever. But there's more than one way that as a society that we check out, or that we numb, or that we deal with our emotions. And food is just one of them, and probably one of the slightly more socially acceptable ones. Unless you happen to put on weight in there, then it's like a whole other story. But essentially, it's just one of the many ways. So most people, unfortunately, in our society, we feel the need to use something to help us cope with modern life. And food is just but one of those. So we're not the only ones who do this. It's just other people do different things, And the scrolling, the constant scrolling, that's numbing. That's kind of checking out, numbing. So it's not just one way we do it. So it's fair to say that for as much shame as emotional eaters put on themselves, or people who do other things, most of us are doing it in one way or another. We're doing something. So it's the human condition rather than just about you or me or whatever, where most of us are doing something like that. And that's a lot about our society, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but that's a whole broad topic. That's a huge topic about why that's happening and what's going on in our society that means that we're doing that. But pretty much it is a roundabout, because once you get on it, if your way of dealing with stress is eating, you keep going around and around in circles. And, that's what we've been taught to do with our feelings, really, because I don't know about you, my background is kind of that kind of Irish, Welsh, whatever, but that's a very much, don't show your feelings, you're coping well with grief if you don't have any. It's like you're back to work 2 weeks after someone special's died. We should be over it by now, what's your problem? And we don't cry in public, and that whole stiff upper lip thing. And the other thing that's quite common in our society, I know this is what my mum used to do with me, and nothing against my mother, most people do it, is that, a child hurts themselves, what's the appropriate response? What do people often do? They give them a lollipop or ice cream or chocolate, or whatever it is, right? And it's good for us to examine, and look, and this is not to shame anyone who does that, because again, it's just a society thing that everyone does it, so that's what we learn to do, right? And, sometimes I don't have children again, so I can be, I don't want to judge it. But, I imagine if you're in a situation like, say, you're at a wedding or somewhere, you want to do whatever it takes for that child to just be quiet, right? Because you're in public and you're at some event or something like that. But essentially what's happening when we are... I'm just seeing what people are saying. If they're saying, oh, good, they're watching. They're not saying I can't hear. Hopefully you can hear me there. Tell me if you can't, but I don't know if I could do much about it. But anyway, what happens is when a child falls over, right, they've hurt themselves or they're crying, they're upset in some way. And the good thing about children is they haven't yet learned that they can't have feelings, which is a really good thing. So they have them. And boy, oh boy, do they have them. And they express them very clearly and very loudly. And while as adults, it's probably not appropriate for us to jump up and down in the supermarket and scream and all that sort of stuff. We could probably do with a little bit more of that, actually being able to have feelings and recognising feelings rather than having to learn how to numb them. So it's quite normal for them to have feelings, and it's really healthy that they do, and it's really healthy that they express them. We just have to teach them how to express them in a better way, but not necessarily the way we do teach them, which is don't have the feeling at all. So what we do as adults is, firstly, most of us as adults are really uncomfortable with strong emotions because we're not around them, because we're not allowed to have them, nobody else is allowed to have them, so we don't have them, right? So let's not have strong emotions. So when your child has a strong emotion, usually that's not very good for you. It makes you very uncomfortable because you're not in touch with your own emotions. And I'm not saying you, I can say for me, and I can say for a lot of people, so don't be offended if you think you are very much in touch with your emotions. Well done. Some people are, but many of us aren't. And I am sometimes, and other times I'm so not, because I'm human like everybody else. So we're not in touch with our emotions. A child's there, child's really having a strong reaction to something, they're crying, whatever they're doing. And we give them that thing to stop them partly because it makes us feel better. Because we're feeling super uncomfortable, because they're feeling super uncomfortable. And we will feel better when they stop. So that is one of the reasons we do it. It's not because we're bad and horrible, it's just a learned behaviour. But be very aware of that. Be very aware of your reason for giving the child the lolly when they're crying or whatever it is. Because you could comfort them. You could just go up and hug them, or go up and tell them they'll be okay, or just go up and listen to them and let them cry and let them say, oh, but the bad thing happened, whatever it is, But, and I'm not saying, and sometimes that's what people do as well. So not saying that people always use food, but it's a very common thing that we do. And if we do that, if we do use food and it's sugar, it's not broccoli. It's not, here's some broccoli to make you feel better. It's not, right? It's always some sugary thing, something like that. But essentially, when you give the child, the lollipop or whatever it is, the ice cream, because they're feeling upset, what if you just taught the child? Not meaning to, but what if you just taught the child?
Just actually told them that if they do it again, they'll get a reward for food.
That's one thing you've taught them, so it's a food reward. The other thing that I would say you've taught them is a very powerful way to numb their emotions and get a dopamine hit, because you get a dopamine hit from having those foods. So you eat the chocolate and you get that woohoo in your brain, right? So we get that from eating those kinds of foods. A little while later, your body's not happy, but initially you get the woohoo, right? So you've taught them how to have that powerful, you get the same thing from Facebook likes. So when you go on and you're scrolling, has anyone liked my post? Has anyone liked? Oh yeah, they have. You get a dopamine hit, which is why a lot of young people are addicted to that Facebook like thing, right? So you get it from food, you get it from cigarettes, you get it from lots of things. So it's kind of a drug kind of a thing, like a drug response. So you're kind of getting this. So one, you have taught them that a way to stop that feeling is to actually eat this sugar, and that sugar will give you that dopamine hit. So you've taught them how very powerfully to change their feelings. And yes, it's behavioural stuff as well. And the other thing you've taught them is, if you do it often enough, is you teach them it's not okay to have the feelings. So it's like, don't have the feeling, don't have the feeling. Whatever you do, don't have the feeling. Here, eat this, right? Because that's what you're doing. And I'm saying, it's like, obviously sometimes, like I said, it's appropriate. You might be at a wedding or somewhere. You might be somewhere where it is really, really appropriate to do what you need to do to stop a child from screaming or yelling. But a lot of the times it's not. It might just be at home or something, fallen over in the park or something like that. But and the other thing too, as a society, because we get judged so much as parents, and everyone looks at you, and what kind of child do you have, and people are surely getting more used to it now, because there's lots of people with special needs children and autistic children and stuff like that, and you can't just kind of stop them. They kind of do what they do, and that's challenging. But so we have to stop judging parents in these situations. But yeah, sometimes all they need really is just you to be present, and you to tell them that it'll be okay, give them a hug. That will work just as well, and it doesn't teach them the food reward dopamine response whole thing in relation, because what happens is we then learn sugary food in response to very powerful emotions, and we're one-time learners, us human beings, and there's a good thing and a bad thing. So the good thing is, as one-time learners, we learn that when you touch the stove and burn your hand, we learn not to do it again. But we also learn when you eat the chocolate and whoa, that feels good, we learn that one as well. We only need to learn that once, right, don't we? How many times do you have to give them broccoli to get them to like broccoli? How many times do you have to give them chocolate to get them, sugar to get them to like that, It's quite interesting that as a one-time learners, we will very much get into that straight away and learn very quickly. So the issue is that we're pretty much teaching our children that it's not okay to have feelings, and here's a way to stop it, a really powerful way to stop it. And that, could potentially have negative effects on them later on, because they've learned that now as their skill, and then they pass it on to the next person. Yeah, no one's saying they can't hear, so I assume they can hear. Hi everybody, I can see you there. So the reptilian brain. So there's a part of our brain that's called the reptilian brain, and the reptilian brain is the part of us that wants to protect us from danger. And it's a part of us that doesn't like change. So an example of how you would see the reptilian brain in action is if you've ever been on a diet or any type of challenge or health kick or something. So you might be getting ready to go and do a run somewhere, and so you're practicing running, or you might have changed your diet, or you might start some plan. And you get, depends on the timing, depends on your brain, but you get maybe between 1 and 3 weeks into it, then all of a sudden you wake up and you kind of go, oh, I could just sleep a bit longer, or this is a bit silly anyway. Fred said that low carb's bad for you, or whatever, but you just start making up reasons why not to do whatever it is you're doing. And suddenly you start sabotaging yourself, and you start making up all these reasons. And the interesting thing is, people get quite ashamed about this and think, oh, look, there's proof, there's something wrong with me, I have no self-control. And it's nothing to do with that. It's actually your reptilian brain, because your reptilian brain doesn't like change, whatever the change is. And your reptilian brain wants you to everything to stay the same, because we'll be fine if we just stay the same. Right? And of course, the only constant we have in life is change. That's the truth of it. But we somehow, if we stay the same, we just don't change anything, we'll just stay here, we'll just keep it the same, it'll all be okay. We're in control of it all, but we're not really. So the reptilian brain gets upset when there's change. So it's good to remember that when you are making a change, and that's why sometimes slow and steady wins the race, because if you do it slowly, your reptilian brain doesn't always notice. Little habit here, little habit there, little habit here. Whereas if you kind of bang go into a big plan, sometimes your reptilian brain gets freaked out really quickly. But the important thing is, it is your reptilian brain. That's what it does, is trying to protect you. And really, you've just got to literally have a conversation with your reptilian brain. That's what I do. I say, oh, hello, how you going? Yep, I know you're here to help me, but don't worry, everything's fine. Thanks for coming along. We're just eating well. There's nothing to see here. It's all good. Just stay with us. We're just getting well. It's all good. Nothing major's changed, and we're going to be fine. You literally just have to tell yourself you're going to be fine. But what happens is we have all these thoughts about stopping, and then we stop, or then we do something, and then we just hate ourselves for it, and all you know how that story goes, right? So instead of kind of going, hey, I'm a human being and that's really normal because I've got a reptilian brain, and reptilian brains don't like change, and I've just changed everything. So be really aware of that, and that's why I kind of like, if I do changes, I tend to do them slowly and steady, and I do that as well just because I'm not very good at making changes, so that works for me. And I do them as quickly as my hubby does them, because he does all the cooking. So he's the one that needs to make the changes. So anyway, so that's the reptilian brain. It's really, really important to remember that it's there to protect you, but in doing that, sometimes it sabotages you, or it feels like it has that effect. So, by the way, all these cartoons, they're from the Awkward Yeti, and the Awkward Yeti is fantastic. So check out the Awkward Yeti on Instagram and Facebook. He does all of these body kind of cartoons, and a lot of them are based on brain and heart, and brain and heart challenges. And brain and heart have a lot of issues with emotional eating. So I really love the Brain and Heart series. So check out the Awkward Yeti. That's where I've sort of gotten these from. By the way, in the next few days, I will send you an email. I'll send you links. Anything I've mentioned here, I'll send you links and stuff to it so you know about it. But anyway, so and if anyone there wants links, you have to email me and ask for it, or DM, because I don't have your email address. So anyway, so we can sort of see what's going on here. You can have all the plans you like in the world, but then your reptilian brain kicks in, and yeah, too bad about your plans. So that's the Awkward Yeti is the name of that one. So recently I was listening to a podcast by Mark David from the Psychology of Eating. I've got his name at the bottom there, and I will email that link to you as well. He's really good, and he's that business where you can get the idea of what that company's about. He's in the US, and so the next few slides are actually based from his talk. So I've kind of just saying right here, this is Mark David's work I'm doing from this moment onwards for the next few slides. It's so good that it's really worth sharing. So this is absolutely what I've just learned from Mark David and the Psychology of Eating. And it's kind of, sometimes it's like stuff, it's like I knew it, but he just explained it so well. He just had such a good way of explaining it. So I thought I would share this with you because it's so powerful. So he says that, like any other thing, I think it's important to learn to listen to our bodies. And I've always sort of talked that with people because I know with the health issues I had when I was younger, I had lots of warnings before I started having strokes and ended up with brain damage and all those kinds of things. I had lots of warnings that I wasn't well, and I didn't listen to my body. I was having headaches and, all the different niggles and things that you get. And essentially, if you don't listen to your body, eventually sort of start shouting at you a bit louder, and eventually it stops you, right? So emotional eating is actually just another one of those. It's another one of those little bits of wisdom if you pay attention to it. So yes, it can be and is a learned thing, and we've just talked about how that sort of happens. But it actually also is a way for you to know there's an issue. Because if you're emotionally eating, then there's a gift for you to know that something's not quite right. What's going on? So rather than seeing it as a curse, his idea is to look around, what's the gift in this, right? And the gift in emotional eating, as he explains it, is it's actually telling you that constant dieting and food restriction doesn't work. If it worked, will we have the issues that we have now? It doesn't work. And so many of us are on diets forever. We've been on diets our whole lives. I've got clients who come in and say, Mum put me on a diet when I was 8, or 10, or 12. I've had clients who were on diet pills when they were children. Like their parents put them on diet pills. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that because we're so messed up, we're messing up our children, not because we're horrible, bad people, just because we're messed up and we don't realise what we're doing. So it's important that we start to realise what we're doing. As Maya Angelou used to say, when you know better, you do better. So it's not about shaming yourself for whatever you didn't do before, but once you know better, start to do better. So be really aware of what we're teaching to our children. And so anyway, so what he sort of says, and this is exactly true, and this is part of that reptilian brain as well, but when we're eating this nutritionally, often diets, they're not nutritionally sound diets, and if they're low in calories, low in fat, all of that sort of stuff, we do end up with an imbalance of nutrients in our body, and our body's actually looking for the nutrients. And we've got to remember, our body isn't that different to that of caveman or that of previous generations. We're just the first generation that had this enormous abundance of food available everywhere forever, whereas previous generations didn't have that, right? So we're the first ones. Us lot, actually I'll explain about us in a few minutes. This generation, what we're doing is differently because it's kind of it goes in with something else I'll be talking about in a moment. But so our bodies are made to look for sugar. And sugar is actually a good thing if there's not much food around, because if you're kind of hunting and gathering and you come across something sweet that's seasonally sweet, that's probably a really good thing to eat, because you probably won't find anything sweet for a long time, and it's going to be a different season, and you've got to get through that season, and you might be going to go through a famine and all sorts of things that are ahead of you. So because our body knows that we've got the potential to go through seasons and famines, our body actually is made very well to adapt to that, a bit like how the bears eat before winter, so that they can live on that fat over winter. Well, our body does a similar thing, not quite to the extent of that, although actually sometimes to the extent of that, really, that we have the ability to do that. So the problem is that we have a body that's adapted to that environment, yet our environment isn't like that, because we don't have famine. Obviously there is in parts of the world, but I'm talking about where we are, here in Sydney. We don't have famine. And we don't have people flying fruit from Argentina or from all over the world. So we don't even have seasonal fruit. We just have stuff all year round, right? Because we fly things in from all over the world and freeze things and gas them and do all the things we do. And we have abundance of food 24/7 because there's a 24-hour service station across the road from my house. Like this, it's just everywhere, right? So we don't have a lack of it, but our body doesn't know that. So when you go on a diet, and when you're having less calories, it goes all right for a little while, but after a little while your body actually starts to think, the famine's coming. And what it does is it actually slows down your metabolism and it grabs onto every calorie and holds onto it like there's no tomorrow, because it doesn't want you to burn any calories and it's trying to hold on to them. And not in all cases. There's a percentage of people who lose weight and stress and lose weight and also there's a percentage of people who lose weight in all sorts of situations where most people gain weight. But for most of us, the way we've adapted to this environment is it's by gaining weight in this situation. But some people lose weight in this situation, but most of us gain weight. But essentially what happens is your brain, and there's whole books being written about this, about how the brain works in regards to weight issues. And pretty much if we think that there's a famine, then our brain will actually slow things down and change the metabolism so that we don't use calories and we keep the calories that we eat. So we kind of completely stopped calorie burning and we're hanging on. And that's what our brain will do. And so the problem with dieting is that's what starts to happen. Because when we diet over and over again, our body thinks that this is what's happening. And then, of course, when we diet, we get nutrient imbalances, we often lose a whole lot of muscle, and then when you stop and when you go back to what you were doing before, you put on more weight than you had before, and then there's a story. Anyone recognise that story? It's a story very familiar to me, personally. So the issue is that your emotional eating could actually be, and quite often is, a very appropriate response. It's your brain having a very appropriate response to what's going on because it thinks that there's going to be a famine. It thinks that you're in trouble. It thinks that there's difficult times ahead. So it actually starts to make you want to crave the foods. It sort of says, you've got to eat, you've got to eat, you've got to eat because there's a famine. And there's apparently a famine, but there's all this food in front of you. So you better eat all that because if you don't, there might not be any more, and we've got to hold on to get through the winter or whatever, So that's pretty much what our body is doing. So emotional eating could be a sign for you that the way you're eating is imbalanced and that you're just not nourishing your body enough, and so it's getting imbalanced and it's starting to crave things. I know years ago when I did a popular diet that starts with W and another W, I remember I hadn't eaten them for years, and I remember getting massive craving for sausages because it was so low fat and I needed fat, and I kind of started I hadn't eaten them for years and suddenly I wanted to eat sausages all the time, and I think it was my body was just so desperately wanting to have the fat. Fat's a really important nutrient as well. It's really important. It makes your hormones. It does lots of things. I won't go into that here because this talk isn't about that, but it is really important to understand that too. If you're not eating balanced, your body will tell you. And the thing is that this is a biological thing. So it's not a lack of morals or a lack of self-control, which is what we name it as. It's actually a biological thing. And that's why now with weight loss diets, a whole story about weight loss diets, that's a whole other talk, and even that one, it's just every 5 minutes there's a different idea and there's something new and there's a new study and there's new information. But what we're knowing at the moment and what we're seeing at the moment is if someone is doing a low calorie kind of a diet, if that's the kind they're doing, that if about every 6 weeks they break it, that helps stop the body from going into this mode of thinking there's famine. So it helps stop that happening. So they're actually actively getting people to break their diets about every 6 weeks to make sure that the body doesn't think that there's a famine coming. So it sort of stops that from happening. So it's one of the strategies that's being used at the moment to try and stop this phenomenon, because this is what our bodies do, because our bodies do not know if there's food everywhere. So our bodies assume that there is food. And okay, cool. So it's not lack of morals, not lack of self-control, it's an appropriate biological response. So emotional eating could be telling you this. So this is the messages that we need to pay attention to. It's not a willpower problem. Like we just said, it's not in any way a failure. It actually simply is your body acting appropriately, responding appropriately to what's happening. But what we call it, the narrative we put behind it is really powerful. And the narrative we put behind it is, I don't have any willpower. there's something inherently wrong with me. Everybody else can control themselves, but I can't. I can't control myself. I don't have self-control. That's the narrative that we put on this, right? Well, I don't know about you, but I know that's my narrative. And so the story you tell yourself is really, really powerful. And the story really is, this is an appropriate biological response from my body. So what do I need to do to get my body back in balance so it's not craving these things? So and the next part of his is what he says, which is exactly right. Food is not your enemy. So fighting food never works, right? Food is not the enemy, and food is not evil or bad. Oh, the only food that's bad is vegetable oil. Sorry, because it's just not food. So that's the only one that I'll say is evil. Everything else, it's about dose, and it's about the individual person's needs, right? But food is not evil. It's not kind of sitting there plotting against you, planning to come and get you. You know, food is just like food, right? No different to like your hairbrush. It's not plotting against you either. It's just something there that, you know. But the difference is, food is something that you need to nourish your body. Food is something you need for energy. So food you absolutely need. It's essential to life, food, right? It's not out to get you. It's essential to life. But if your brain's doing these messages that are messing things up, then we need to look at what's going on and start looking at what's going on in our life and what's it trying to tell us. And is part of this is very much the narrative, the story we tell ourselves. Now, it's easier said than done, but it is really, really important to change that narrative. And there's two ways. I'll talk a bit more about narrative as we go along, but there's two ways. One is just to actually notice your narrative in the first place. Just notice what you're saying to yourself or what you're saying to other people. Just notice what you say, because when you really start listening, you kind of go, wow, geez, that's a bit awful, that's a bit nasty. We really say horrible things. And the more you start to notice it, the more you start to be able to sort of say, you know what, hey, that's not true. I don't have an issue with self-control. I just haven't been eating well, and now my body's out of whack, and my body thinks it needs these things. So it's about starting to change that. A friend of mine, he's a hypnotherapist, and that's another way of changing that, because they change your story, they change your narrative. Mm-hmm. So if you have trouble changing the narrative logically and consciously, then you can work with someone like a hypnotherapist. I'll give you her details. Her name is Linda Campbell from Mind Mastery. She's just based in Penrith, but she helps you change your narrative, faster way, because dealing with the unconscious is a lot faster than dealing with the conscious. But you can do it both ways, but certainly the unconscious mind is really fast for doing it. But our narrative is really important, and if you think about it, all we ever do every day is tell stories, don't we, to ourselves? Because my whole belief in who I am and what the world is about, it's all a story. The story is based on where I was born, who my parents were, what school I went to, what jobs I've had, what education I've had, what I'm exposed to. And I believe my story is the truth, but you believe your story is the truth. Somebody else has their truth. They're all just stories. They're all just fictional stories that we've made up with little bits of facts, but they're all our version of it. They're stories, right? And we can tell ourselves a different story. We just have to be aware that in the first place that we're telling stories. And the voices you hear in the head, they're not you, they're not like anything special, they're just programs. They're programs that probably were put in, before you were even old enough to know about it, because up until the age of 7, you can't disagree with anything that's told to you, you kind of believe it. You don't have the ability to kind of assess it and go yes or no. So anything up until about the age of 7 is pretty much a program. So depending on how messed up your childhood was, or what your parents, even if your parents are loving people, what they were saying, that all just goes straight in. And then from there on in, we do have the ability to say yay or nay and accept information. But ultimately, we are, what we believe is based on what we've been exposed to. And we tell ourselves stories every day about who we are and what we think. And we can tell ourselves a different story. And that's, and when you look at all of the people, if you read all the books in the world about success and about Oprah Winfrey and about Richard Branson and whoever else, Nelson Mandela, whoever inspires you, what's the difference between them and us? They tell themselves a different story. Or, them and me, I won't talk, about you, but they tell themselves a different story. They're telling themselves the story of it can be done, and I will do this, and I'll have a go, and failure's okay, but I'll keep going, It's just a story that we tell ourselves. So fighting food is pretty much insanity, because we can't fight food, we need to eat food, so we need to actually stop fighting it. So Einstein says that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? So essentially what we need to do is we need to do something different, because fighting food, well, that ain't working. I don't know about for you guys, but it doesn't work for me. And what we need to do is we need to learn how to nurture and nourish ourselves. And that comes in lots of different ways. It comes in the way we talk to ourselves. It comes in the food that we eat. It comes in whether or not we move our body. We don't have to go and get gym memberships necessarily. That's what I did this year because that's what I really needed to do. But whether or not it's doing a few exercises at, at your desk at lunchtime, whether or not it's, getting a treadmill and having that at home, whether or not it's walking a dog, whatever it is. But we do need to move our bodies, and that's a way of nurturing and nourishing ourselves. Food is a way of doing that. Our narrative is a way of doing that, but also who you spend your time with. Right.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it is a huge one, because if you spend your time with a whole bunch of really kind of negative people that suck the life out of you, it's not very nurturing, is it? And so that's where unfortunately our workplaces can come into it as well, because sometimes workplaces can be really nurturing and nourishing and give you a lot of energy, and sometimes not so much. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of workplaces that are messed up. And I think that we're also messed up, that it's just, that goes that way, doesn't it? Because if a whole bunch of messed up people are in a workplace, they all make a bit of a mess of it, and it make it hard for everybody. And we end up with these toxic cultures. But really nurturing, nourishing yourself isn't just about what you eat, it's about all of the other things as well. So I could say to my clients, I recently had a client who was having a problem, a work issue, and I could have just said, eat more broccoli. And yeah, he needed to eat more broccoli, that was great. But I actually helped him get connected with someone who could help him with the workplace issue, because that was his biggest issue.
Yeah,
eating more broccoli.
Do weight loss or healthy living if all the rest of the stuff is not working for you. Because that whole thing with having to change with food is a mental game.
Yeah, it is.
Acknowledge that. But if the rest of the stuff
You've got to put everything in place. So making any changes, I don't know if you guys heard that there, but making any changes in your life, whether it's about weight loss or just improving your health or emotional eating or whatever it's about, it requires a whole lifestyle thing. It's a holistic approach. You cannot do it just by, right? Sorry, I'm standing in your way. You cannot do it just by saying, let's eat broccoli, and I'll just eat broccoli and that will be it. Now, and it's fine to do it slow and steady. So if you want to start by eating broccoli, go for it. But of course, broccoli is not going to be the wholly solely answer. So if we address our diet, but we don't address our toxic work culture, or we address our diet, but we don't address our difficult relationships with family or whatever, or if we address our diet, but we never move our body, we've got to look at all of the things that are affecting our health, because it's not just food. And this is where I want to talk a little bit, and I already alluded to this anyway, talking about the modern world versus elsewhere. When we look at, has anyone ever heard of the blue zones? The blue zones are the places in the world where they've found people who live to over 100 and they're really healthy, and it's in Okinawa in Japan. I think there's another place in Greece, and my mind's not coming. I think there's one in Italy. Anyway, there's places, different pockets around the world where people are essentially really, really healthy, live to 100, and they're still going. They're not in a nursing home. They're out there and they're part of their community. And the other thing, the other comparison too would be even just in places in Italy, like where the Mediterranean diet was originally studied. When we look at the Mediterranean diet, it's a similar story to this, that it's not just about the diet. So what we see when we look at these cultures, any culture in the world where we see that people are really super healthy, and they're super healthy right up until ripe old age, it's not just about their diet. So is their diet? Yes. And the thing that they all have in common with their diet isn't that they're all vegan or they're not or whatever, because it's all quite different. They all have, actually, I don't think there is a culture that they've studied that was vegan, but there are some who have less meat, some who have more, and all of that, which is fine. But what they were doing is eating seasonal, local, real food, the same food that they've been eating in that place, in that culture for thousands of years. So they weren't eating anything from the drive-through and then in McDonald's or from the microwave, and they weren't eating a microwave meal in front of the computer or the TV. They were actually just eating real food. So food is important, and it was basically their cultural food, whatever that looked like for them. So just their real ancestral diet. So that's where their diet was different, just real food and ancestral food. But the other thing they had in common is they had connection in their community. They were part of a community, and they're important parts of their community. So they were really connected. So they had friends, they had people who had their back, and whether it was their family or friends or whatever, but these people, they stop and they eat with other people, and they relax and they cook at lunchtime, and they eat real food, so it's kind of a slower life, and a life where they're connected to their community. And they're connected to the community all the way through too. So not just, when they're young, but when they're older, they're important. Not only are they important, but they are actually more important because they are wise, and they are the people that young people go to for advice. So instead of getting older and becoming less relevant and nobody wants to, becoming invisible, they actually get older and become more important, right? So they stay connected to their communities. The other thing they do is they move their body. They don't go to the gym, but they move their body because they're either in the rice paddies or they're in the olive grove or they're walking to the village or they're milking the cow, whatever they're doing, but they move their body. And so they have these, and it's just a really kind of relaxed and stress-free kind of, not stress-free, but relaxed environments. There's stress involved in life, but just a quite relaxed environments. So the thing that these people have in common is that they have all of these things going for them. Now, if you compare that to our modern society at the moment, so they've got a default for health. There's pretty much no other choice, right? Why would they not be healthy, right? There's a default for it. So what have we got? We've got mostly processed food, ultra-processed food. You've really got to go looking for real, fresh, local, seasonal food, right? And not only that, but you've actually got to have the time and the energy to buy it and prepare it and all of that, because we've got these busy on lives. We don't have a situation now in most cases where we've got kind of the 1950s mum at home cooking and looking after the family. In most cases, both parents are working, or families look all different ways now too. I acknowledge that, so don't get anyone offended. But families look different, and often most of the parents or most of the adults involved are working, and we're super busy. We just don't have time, and we've got jobs where we're expected to work long hours and where we're expected to be available 24/7, and we don't get home and we're finished work. A lot of us get home and then we're on our mobiles and we're on our emails, and and we've got phones that just beep every few seconds with an email or this or that, right? And every time that happens, you have a stress response. So we've got these busy lives. We often don't have time to do the things in our lives to make us healthy, whether it is exercise or whether it is eating well, and we're just nothing is in our favour really. We're actually our default for sickness because we've got the wrong psychological environment, that we're not supportive. And that's where I was going to talk about before, is the community. This is probably the first generation now of human beings who've tried to survive without their village, without their community. We're not part of community anymore. I'm not saying nobody is, but once upon a time we were part of a village, we were part of a community. And now we've got bigger houses and bigger cars or whatever, and we sit in our houses with our big gates and our big fence by ourselves. And we're not connected to anyone around us. When I was growing up, the kids were all out on the street. That's what it was like. All the kids were on the street together. And, your parents, even if they may have been friends, may have not, but the parents knew each other and they knew the kids. And it was like it took a village, right? A village to raise a child. Well, now, again, I'm not going to go into why because this is complicated stuff, but now for loads of reasons, we're not like that. We're sort of living individually and separately. And it's one of the reasons why loneliness is one of the biggest killers in the world at the moment too. Loneliness is really bad for you. And the reason why it's such a big deal is because if you think about it, when we lived in a village environment, which is kind of what we came from, in a village environment, if you got shut out of the village, that probably meant death for you. If your village didn't look after you, you would probably die, right? Once upon a time, that was the truth. So now when our village doesn't accept us in and we get left out, we could be still having that same emotional response as if a death response. Oh my God, I'm going to die because I'm not part of the village. It's so important to us that we have this connection. And when we don't have it, it really affects our mental health quite a lot. And lonely people do tend to start having a narrative around people don't want to know me, and people don't. You start that narrative that actually makes it worse. So our default in the Western world is illness. And the only thing I can say to that is obviously you can't completely change your environment, but you can change what you put in your mouth as much as possible. Just do the best you can. Whether it's frozen vegetables in the microwave, that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. Or if you get instant meals, but they're good ones, like Nutritionist station around the corner, they make some good meals. Or whatever it is, and moving your body. Now, whether that means just getting up at lunchtime and for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, 3 minutes, move your body, do some sit-ups or whatever, but just moving your body somehow, right? Whether it'll just go for a walk around the block at lunchtime, and looking at the people you spend your time with, and as much as you can, don't hang around with the people who bring you down. Like, Life's too short, right? Looking at the people in your life and spending time with the people you love and the people you energize each other. And, having community, creating that community wherever you can. So whether it's your school community or your work community. In Penrith, we've got Women Without Student. Actually, they're all over Sydney, and they're kind of a network group for not just business women who have businesses, but all women. And I'm a part of that community, and they're fantastic because it's just a network of other women, So whatever it is, but we need community. We really need community. We cannot do it alone. So having community makes a really big difference, and we need to create that for ourselves because it's kind of not a given anymore. But we just need to look at our environment and change it the best we can in our favour. And also turning your phone off at a certain time at night. Turning off all the beeps on your phone that happen 24/7. You don't need that all the time. You do need to have a beep to tell you that you got an email when you're driving home. Or, is it going to make a difference? You're driving home. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you get home and then find the 10 emails there or that you hear them all the way, because what happens is every one of those beeps is a stress response. And you're doing that all the way home, right? So help yourself by backing off some of these things where you don't need it. Unless you're in an emergency, someone has to answer the phone for some reason, don't answer it when you don't need to. Turn it off when you don't need to. Turn off some of the beeps and things. And whatever you do, don't wake up in the morning and get your phone and look at your phone straight away. Because the first thing you're doing is taking yourself to this drug of the phone and finding out all the bad news. Finding out who bombed who this week and all the horrible things that are happening in the world. Don't do that first thing. Give your brain time to wake up. Because it actually takes a while for your part of your brain to wake up that's kind of the part that's rational. So what happens is you wake up and you're feeling stressed and whatever, and the rational bit hasn't kicked in yet, and the first thing you do is go on Facebook. Not a good idea. This is just terrible that over 90% of girls disapprove of their body. And 3 to 6 year olds, nearly 50% were worried about being fat. I wasn't thinking about being fat at 3 to 6, no, I was a real chubby little one. And 30% already wanted to change something specific about their body. What 6-year-old thinks about their body like that? But they do now. It's terrible.
On earth the parents been telling the kids, or where are they been?
Well, not just the parents, it's the world. I was talking to someone else the other day about a young child a similar age who's talking about not wanting to eat too much fat and wanting to be on a diet and worried that they were putting on weight, and this child is about 7 or something like that. Just horrifying.
Where are they getting these messages from?
Well, partly they're getting it from their parents because parents are messed up. But they're not just getting it from their parents. They're getting it from school. They're getting it from social media. They're getting it from other people around them, movies, television, whatever. They're getting it from society as a whole. So it's a real issue. And so part of this is us identifying our role in this. And not to judge other parents, but hey, let's just say, well, I know my role in this, and let's start talking differently about things.
I'm actually going to pull you up on that. And the reason I'm saying that, because as someone who's been overweight before, and you've got your own story obviously, is that I think if we don't start speaking our truth about this, that we won't change that situation. And do you understand where I'm at? It's
okay to speak your truth, but I don't think it is okay to go up to people and say, you're doing it wrong, there's something wrong with you. That's a different...
I get that, but I do think that unless people start taking a stand with what we've spoken about tonight, you're not going to change the situation.
No.
There are too many parents who are in that mindset. I've seen it with workplaces too, after 30 years in working around it, that if we don't start speaking up about some of these things, we have a responsibility to ourselves and the people that we love.
Yeah, we do, and it's just the way we go about that.
With
so it's one thing to say, let's have a conversation around this, we're all a bit messed up, let's talk about better ways of doing it. And it's another thing to say, you're a terrible parent. So it's just the way we approach it, because we all know that if someone came up to you and said, there's something wrong with you, straight away, it doesn't help because the person is on the defence. So it is very important, and we do need to bring this up. But the first thing we can do is take responsibility for ourselves and what we do, and just think of the way that women talk when we go out. When women go out, when a group of people go out and they're ordering food at a restaurant, what do you hear from men? Men just kind of say, I'll have the steak sandwich, I'll have the steak, whatever. What do you hear from women talking to each other? What do? They say, well, I've been really good this week, so I'm going to do this.
So
I've been really bad this week.
Why? It's not about being good or bad.
No, it's not about being good or bad.
That there in itself is an opportunity for you to...
Yeah. Say, no, you haven't been good or bad. You choose whatever it is that you would like to eat because you're an adult and you're allowed to choose, right? And you do not have to justify your choice with anybody else. We do not have to justify our choice. We do not have to know we've been good or know we've been bad or know we do or don't deserve this. If we start to just listen to our body and nurture and nourish ourselves, we'll know what we need. And if that sometimes is the cake, we'll have the cake. That's fine.
You know what? It's perfectly okay.
Yeah, as long as it's not always the cake. So we actually have to learn. So when you're out at dinner, and I do it sometimes, and I hear myself saying it, and I kind of pull myself up on it. Pull yourself up on it and say, ladies, let's not have this discussion. We're allowed to choose whatever we like. We don't have to justify it and just leave it there, right? So we do have to start pointing out these things because we're not going to stop doing it until we realise we're doing it. And I tell you, like, I do it sometimes and I teach this all the time. And then I realise I hear myself doing it, you know. But you and I will sometimes sort of say, I've been good, or oh my God. And
I do it on purpose.
Yeah, yeah, you do.
I take the
You do,
out.
yeah. But we do. So the narrative, the story we tell ourselves is very important, and you have to notice the story we're telling ourselves, and we have to tell a different story. And if we tell a different story, that will teach something different to the young people around us and the other people around us. So rather than saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, how about I actually just start doing it a little bit better? And I show you that, and I show you love, and I show you, you know, all compassion, and that helps you do it rather than everyone's wrong and I'm right, which is, no, it doesn't work. And I'm going to send you the link to this, but it's actually a really good TED talk about the narrative, the story that we tell ourselves. And I haven't really got time to explain the story, so I'll send you the link.
He explains it better.
But he explains it really well. But for those over there, it's Guy Winch. It's Guy Winch, Why We Practice Emotional First Aid. Google it. It's really good. And I'll send the link to these people. But it's a great TED talk all about narrative. And he also talks about loneliness and our narrative about that and the stories we start to tell ourselves. Really powerful, really good TED talk. So that's Guy Winch, Why We Practice Emotional First Aid. And essentially, narrative, you know, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, right? So there's a difference between Oprah or those people and someone else. There's a difference as well what they say to themselves. And that's exactly getting to that, have you been good or bad, right? No, you haven't been good or bad, you've just been human, right? Stop using that language. Clients will come and say to me, I've been good this week, or I've been bad. And the first thing I'll say is, let's stop with that emotive language, right? Food is nourishment. Food is energy. That is all it is. So what we do as adults is we make a choice. So what we do is we say, okay, I want to have dinner. What do I want to have for dinner? What do I need? And I say, what do I need? Because I think about, well, what I'm going to do after this? Where am I going to go? Do I have more clients? Do I have to be? And I think, well, what do I need to allow that to happen? And so I know if I had, you know, I can't do wheat, so I know if I had something like pasta, that would just put me to sleep and turn my brain off and I'll be non-functional, right? So it's a really good choice for me to not have that. And I know that it's better if I have some protein and some vegetables, right? So that will be my choice most of the time. But sometimes it might be, hey, the chocolate thing. That's fine as well. It's just a choice. They're all choices. But my suggestion is we make them from a point of view of what will nourish and nurture me right now? What do I need right now physically? And we go from that place. That's like a completely non-emotional place, right? It's not about good or bad or right or wrong or the rules or whatever. It simply is, what do I need, right? And you start from that place and how do I need to feel for the rest of today? And you'll make better choices most of the time, but sometimes you'll still choose the chocolate thing and that's fine. Have it, enjoy it. Don't shame yourself over it, just have it, enjoy it, and move on. But all this good or bad stuff, notice your language on this, because I use this language all the time too, even though I teach it. I hear it because it's so ingrained in our culture that it's, you know, really impossible not to. So just, again, start to notice the language you use with yourself, and if you have got children, with them, talking around food. It's not good or bad. It's all just a choice. And it's a choice about what we need to nourish ourselves. Simple as that. Sometimes the chocolate is the right thing to nourish you at that point in time, but not all of the time, right? So it simply is, food is just a choice of what is going to nourish you. Simple as that. No good, bads, right, wrongs, rules, or any of that kind of stuff. And the other thing is, we do all or nothing. So what we do is, as soon as we have the chocolate, we feel shame, and then, there we go again. You have the chocolate, enjoy the chocolate, and move on. That's okay. You're allowed to enjoy chocolate. Just have it and keep going. But don't have it, and then the narrative starts, the story starts, all the things you want to say about yourself, and here we go again, right? So you have the chocolate, enjoy the chocolate. And this is actually from Brene Brown. I don't know if anyone's heard of Brene Brown. She's coming to Australia soon. I wish I was going. If someone wants to donate me a $500 ticket for Brene, I'd really appreciate it. But she talks about perfectionism, and a lot of people call themselves perfectionists, and they don't understand really what it means. And it's not about striving to do well. That's not perfectionism. Perfectionism is a way of thinking and feeling that says, if I look perfect, do it perfect, work perfect, and live perfect, I can avoid or minimise shame, blame, and judgment. So just be aware with your narrative, if you're one of those people that calls yourself a perfectionist, be aware of what's driving that. Because a perfectionist is not someone striving to do well. A perfectionist is someone trying to avoid all those nasty feelings. That's a very different thing. So perfectionists are trying to avoid feeling bad. They're trying to avoid being cast out of the village. They want to make sure people still like them because they're trying to avoid these things, pain and judgment. I just pointed at you. Sorry.
Just joking.
She's going on holidays tomorrow. So that's what perfectionism is. It's really important to understand that it's not the same as healthy striving. Healthy striving is fine. Wanting to do well is fine. But being driven by, if I only do this, then I'll be okay. That's often the thing that you see in the people who like, there's, I'll be happy when. When what? Because first it's when I have earned this much money, or when I get married, or when I have children, or when I have a car, or when I get a promotion, or when I get to a size 8, or when I whatever. And you get there and you're not happy. And we keep moving the goalposts because when never happens. So choose to be happy now, because now's all we have, and forget this perfection stuff because it's not healthy. It's actually very unhealthy. This is what Brene teaches actually in regards to learning how to say no sometimes. What she does is she says to herself 3 times while she's turning her ring, choose discomfort over resentment, choose discomfort over resentment, choose discomfort over resentment. And then she says, no, I can't help you. Or someone else can, or whatever she says, but she says no to the thing rather than yes, because she used to be a people pleaser and say yes to people all of the time. Yes, I'll do cookies for the bake sale, and then she'd be at 3 a.m. making the cookies and feeling really resentful. So what she does is she chooses discomfort over resentment. The discomfort of saying no, which is very momentary, over the resentment of being at 3 a.m. doing something that you agreed to do that you didn't want to do in the first place. So Brene's work is, I'll send you some links to her, she's really worth looking into. But that's very smart, that choose discomfort over resentment. A nice little mantra to have to remind yourself to say no sometimes, because that all feeds into your stress and all those kinds of things. So we've already talked about your internal dialogue. You're not the voice in your head. Notice it and be curious. Don't judge it. Something else to judge. Oh, I said I'm being good. I should judge myself on that. No, you shouldn't. It's okay. And I never thought I was a bully until I listened to how I speak to myself. I owe myself an apology. Does anyone relate to that?
Yes.
I know I relate to that one. And a good breathing technique is to get your body from that fight or flight stress place into a much more relaxed rest and digest place, is this breathing technique, which is one where you breathe in for 4 seconds and out for 7 seconds. You do that for 1 minute, so it's just 6 breaths in and out, and that calms your body right down from this fight or flight to rest and digest, which is a much calmer place to be, and it's a place where you will actually be able to digest your food and use your calories and do all the things you need to do and absorb your nutrients. I'll send you information on that too.
I saw that the other day. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Why is the dog happier? The dog's present. As human beings, we're everywhere, but we're not present, so we need to be a bit more like the dog. Hang out with dogs, they're smart. Animals in general are horses, whatever animal you like, but they kind of know. They get it. We don't, but they do. And, create an emotional toolbox for yourself, because if food is your only thing that you know, how to change your state or how to numb yourself or how to comfort yourself, I would suggest a couple of things. Firstly, learn how to have a feeling, because it is okay to have feelings, and we need to practice having them. So rather than change or do something, let yourself sit in that uncomfortableness for a minute or two. The uncomfortableness won't kill you, and it's good practice to learn how to have a feeling, because we actually need to learn how to have some of these feelings, because feelings don't go away, they just keep being pushed down and keep coming up again. They go away when you have them, right? So you actually have to have the feeling for it to move on. Just keep pushing it down, it doesn't go anywhere. I think you've probably noticed that, haven't you? It keeps coming back, right? So we actually have to learn how to have feelings, and it's okay to have feelings. We need to learn how to have them. We don't have to be happy all the time. It's not a normal human response to be happy all the time. We're humans, we're going to have all different feelings, and some days you're just going to say, today I'm just feeling sad. That's okay. I'm just sad today. Or it might be I'm happy, or it might be I'm a bit anxious today, or I'm a bit whatever. That's okay. Just be with where you're at. But practice this. If you kind of want to reach for the chocolate because you're having a feeling, let yourself have a feeling for a moment. You'll be surprised that you can actually cope with the feeling. The other thing is create a toolbox of other things, because it takes about 90 seconds to distract ourselves. So a toolbox that doesn't include food. So that chocolate's a thing you do sometimes, but other times you do other things. And these are some of the examples of what those things might be. Everyone's different with what works for them. On my phone, I've got music, I've got podcasts, I've got books, I've got everything known to man, and I'll play something to get my attention on something else, or I'll play music. I might play music and kind of dance around, daggy dance, or I just might play it and just listen to it, or I might put on an interesting podcast and start learning about, I don't know, someone from somewhere doing something different, whatever it is. The other one I do is I do the shake it off thing. I hear a lot of really intense things here in clinic. A lot of people have life's hard, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I spend a lot of time with people who've had intense pain and grief and, you know, whatever, and there's nothing against those people, but when I'm finished with those consultations, I go outside and I shake it off. Back to the dog. Watch what the dog does. The dog's smart, right? So we're going to shake it off, and if you've been around people at work who are really intense and who are really unpleasant, shake it off, right? You don't have to carry their stuff home with you. You just don't, right? You don't have to carry other people's stuff. We've got enough of our own without carrying anybody else's, geez. But, you know, whatever it is that works for you. And, you know, cat videos. Why do you think they're one of the most popular things on YouTube?
Oh, dog
They
videos.
work. Dog videos. I've been watching sloth videos. They're so cute. And owl videos. You should watch sloths. They're hilarious. But yeah, we're watching. Was it a sloth day? You were watching a sloth and something else.
Oh, it was
A baby guinea pig that didn't have any hair.
Didn't have hair, looked like a hippo.
Looked like a hippo.
Tiny hippo. It was actually really cute.
Right? But you know what? That makes you laugh.
Yeah.
And you laugh and you relax, right? And so it's just like, you know, watch a video. Yeah, it takes about 90 seconds to distract yourself. So have this in your toolbox. What are all things that you need to do this? And what are the things for you? For some people it's craft. I couldn't think of anything worse, but I've got lots of friends. Well, no, I've got lots of friends who do craft. But you know, but whatever, it could be music, it could be a podcast, it could be whatever it is. It could just be breathing, it could be a mantra that you say to yourself, it could be SMS a funny gift to your friend. I don't know, like, you figure out what that is. I don't know what your job is, but it's got to be something that, you know, actually essential oils work for me too. Sometimes I've got some in my desk and I just wave on my nose and pop it back down. Kind of calms me as well. I use bergamot, not because I'm a special aromatherapist and I know that it's good. I just like it. So I'm not recommending it because I'm an aromatherapist, but it works. So it just helps me feel calm.
Is it quite successful? I've been wondering about essential oils and how well.
Yeah, look, I'm not an expert on them. I would just recommend don't put them in your food, like in your drinks and stuff. But yeah, I just wave it under the nose, and it works really nicely. So whatever works, but that works for me. And you know, so just like fill up your toolbox with other things. There are other things that takes about 90 seconds to distract yourself, and you distract yourself, and then it's not always about the chocolate or whatever it is for you, all right? So it's just really important to learn these other distraction tools for yourself. So it's not only about that. And remember, in regards to exercise, it's a celebration of what your body can do, not a punishment for what you ate. Right? We've got to really start telling ourselves a different story, because many people see this as what exercise is. And a couple of things to remember. Again, from the Awkward Yeti, I loved Awkward Yeti. I actually had to control myself, and I removed about 5 Awkward Yeti comics from this because I had too many. And there's another one, and I said to my body softly, I want to be your friend. It took a long breath and replied, I've been waiting my whole life for this. You know, we've got to be friends with our body. Face it, we're in this body for our whole lives. It's the one home that you're going to have for your whole life. So you better make friends with it, get to know it, and start to be a bit kind to it. Because I think we all have to start from a place of actually just being really compassionate and kind to ourselves, because we're so not. And it's so wrong. We've got to start to be kind. And if we want to learn how to be kind to other people, that's where it starts. Can't be kind to other people or compassionate to other people if you can't have it for yourself. We think we can have compassion for others, but it starts here. Start with yourself. Start with some compassion for yourself. Here we go. Thank you. And I will say goodbye to you guys now, and I'll answer your questions later. Oh, was it on here?
Someone just wanted you just to say the comfort food. What did you mean by comfort food? It might be easier to verbalise that.
Yeah, comfort food is any food that you eat that gives you comfort, so that changes your emotional state. So usually it's not broccoli, so in my case it's chocolate. So it's different for different people, but it could be anything. Chocolate, but ice cream, comfort food. Give me some examples, guys. What are yours? Go to. Mine's chocolate. A lot of food is ice cream, biscuits. Yeah, they're the common ones. So whatever it is for you. Everyone's different. Might be the thing that mum taught you when you were a little kid. I don't know, sugar. But anyway, I will talk to you guys later, but I'm going to finish this now. Thank you, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.